Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Navs Effect podcast. I'm your host, Naveen Ganglani. I'm recording this late. No, sorry, early on a Monday morning, October 20. It's a few hours since the conclusion of what was an absolutely epic and electrifying game between the DLSU Green Archers and the UP Fighting Maroons. A game which I thought, okay, I'm not going to go as far as to say it was the most exciting game of season 88 so far because that honor I feel still belongs to the triple overtime classic between UST and Ateneo. But just in terms of execution, stakes, um, a chess match almost in a basketball game between the two coaching staffs, two teams that really know each other, players that know each other's tendencies, that familiarity concept, blow for blow, almost like a boxing match to some degree. This was all of that. I know that UP led by 8 at one point, but the game just felt so close between both teams, and anyone could have really won. It just so happened that DLSU ended up having the bigger shots and the bigger stops down the stretch of the game. So we're going to talk about that. Now, don't forget though that that's the first part of this podcast where I'm going to share my observations about the game. And the second part of the podcast will be me speaking with Diego Dario. Yes, the one and only Diego Dario, who is doing broadcasting work for Signal in the UAAP this season. We kind of recap the first round of UAAP season 88 men's basketball and look forward to the second round. Now, take note, we recorded this a few days ago on Friday before the final weekend of the first round. So these last four games, the context isn't quite included there yet. Nevertheless, we took some of the lessons we learned from the first round and discussed that. And we kind of try to predict what are the long term implications we can rely on as we move forward with the rest of this unpredictable, exciting, passionate, crazy, beautiful UAP season 88. It's been absolutely wonderful. But first, let's talk UP LaSalle. Now, obviously, before the game, there was the idea that maybe LaSalle was a slight underdog without Mason Amos and Kean Baclaan in this contest. And also, UP had entered the contest winning their last four straight games. So they were on a roll right after their first two losses to start the season. They were really coming together and playing impressively last few contests. But LaSalle came ready for the fight. And a lot of people just immediately assumed, and rightfully so, that once Baclaan and Amos went down, it meant, okay, bigger responsibilities for Jacob Cortez and Michael Phillips, and maybe Luis Pablo to some degree, but mostly Phillips and Cortez. And there's nothing wrong with that because, to be fair, those are the two best players of DLSU, and they were the most important players in this win against UP as well. But what LaSalle showed, and this is very important when you consider their chances for the rest of season 88, was that you can count on guys like Goliana, Abadam, Marasigan sometimes, Pablo, to step up when it's needed. Even Makalalag and Dungo, who I thought didn't shoot so great in this game, but played their roles at the least. LeBron James dive still a little bit of a work in progress, still needs some time. Pablo especially, I thought played well. And if we look at the stats right now, let's read through them real quick here. Pablo actually led all scorers in the game with 14 points of 6 of 13 shooting from the field, had 6 boards, and was a plus 10, a team high plus 10 when he was on the court for DLSU. And that was in a game where he got hit on the face and was bleeding too. Now, sometimes, like in the case of Dwayne Wade, when you start bleeding, you start playing better. And that seemed to work for Pablo in this game. But some of his moves in the paint, the emphatic rebounds over Naruka and Stevens, guys taller than him. There's that one shot block on in transition defense as well, which I thought was very instrumental in turning the momentum of the game. He has stepped up. He actually also stepped up in the OT period in their last one against UE. If you go back and watch a tape of how he was trying to play denial defense on Precious Momoe, who had 42 points at that point, it was quite encouraging, and he kept that momentum going. Now, let's not forget, this was a double machine. Pablo was in his final season with LaSalle Green Hills. After the contest in the press conference, he said that his MVP season with LaSalle Green Hills was so long ago now. And to be fair, it was like 3 seasons ago, right? He's been with UP, he's done residency, and now he's playing his first season with LaSalle. And suddenly he's been asked to step up and play a bigger role than initially established because of the injury to Mason. But he's tough and he's talented and he's athletic and he's got skill. When the ball is in his hands, if you're a LaSalle fan, you're not worried because it might not always go according to plan. However, and sometimes it's a turnover. However, you can be certain that that's a player who's confident, who knows what he's doing, who knows what his role is, and won't try to do too much to the detriment of the team. He'll also hit a few mid-range jumpers every now and then. The free throw shooting, 2 out of 5, could use some work, but he has a good stroke. It's not like the mechanics are broken. And the one takeaway you have from the way Luis Pablo played, the one main takeaway from the way Luis Pablo played was that he can fill in the role of being maybe the third or fourth guy on the team that you rely on the most from a game to game basis. And that might be enough to keep LaSalle in Final Four contending status, especially if Jacob and Mike continue to lead the way. Cortez, 12 points, 5 of 10 from the field, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Did have 4 turnovers though, but 2 steals. However, it just felt like it has all season long that when the ball was in his hands, that was when LaSalle's offense seemed to be at most ease. And Phillips, 12 points, 4 of 9 shooting, 19 boards, was fighting and clawing the UP front line for those rebounds. 4 assists, 2 turnovers, plus 7, and he's 32 and a half minutes. 4 of 8 from the free throw line. Still a work in progress, but you know what you're going to get from Motor Mike at this point, and you know how essential he is to the team. And you just saw so many LaSalle fans holding their breath, like, whenever Mike was subbed out of the game, just because he was manning the paint and was an absolute workhorse. But LaSalle doesn't win this game without EJ Golian, who had 12 points and 5 of 6 shooting. He had 2 big 3-pointers. The first one was in the first half when UP had extended its lead to 7 off a kick out pass that he knocked down from the wing. And then the second was a 3-pointer early in the third quarter when UP had started strong and EJ took the momentum back. He also had a good baseline cut. He drove from the baseline. Oh, sorry. He had a baseline drive, and then he had that one play where he cut, and I believe it was Earl who found him for the reverse layup. Those 12 points don't like immediately jump off the page, but when you look back in the game video and you realize when those baskets of Goliana came, you'll notice, wow, those are very important shots. And he is gonna be needed by this team. He's hustle, he's energy. It's his second season. No, sorry, third season playing as a Green Archer, but second season with a proper role. And he just continues to improve every year. And he is going to be someone DLSU needs to rely on more and more as the season moves forward. Speaking of guys DLSU will rely on, Earl Abadam, 9 points and 4 of 11 shooting, 4 boards, and 3 turnovers, 2 assists. Now, you look at the stats here, like, oh, that's an inefficient game. But like Earl, when you look at some of when he made his biggest shots, it was very integral. Now, don't get me wrong. There's that one turnover at the end of the game when Raylan Torres slapped the ball from his hand and gave UP another crack at winning this contest, which you don't want to see if you're LaSalle, right? But that pull-up step back where he used his strength to get Naruka off him, and Naruka actually fell to tie the game. And then later on, he was the guy actually defending Fortea on that really nice UP offensive set where Fortea gets the pass from Alarcon, knocks down the 3. I think that was when they went 69-66. That ended up being UP's final shot of the game. And then right after the next play, it was Abadam guarding Fortea, and Fortea makes a shot over him. And then right after the next play, Abadam, fearless, gets the ball off the kick out pass from Phillips, pulls up, knocks it down, plus the foul. He missed the free throw, though, of course. LaSalle in this game shot 13 of 24 from the foul line, 54%. In the game, they only won by 3. So that remains to be a work in progress. But that was a big, big time shot by Earl. And again, you saw the confidence right after that. He took the midi, which he missed, and Marasigan ends up coming from the weak side to clean up the glass, score the putback, and that ends up being the final field goal of the game. Marasigan also stepped up in this game. 5 points and 2 of 5 shooting, but 8 rebounds. Was really battling in the boards, using his body as much as possible, trying to keep UP off the offensive glass. When you look at it, actually, LaSalle out-rebounded UP 54-45. Now, the turnovers were 16-16. So in terms of the possession battle, LaSalle actually won. And that's surprising considering that Bright Noanco's minutes weren't great and they were missing another big man in Amos and Phillips. Now, Phillips did most of the damage on the boards, but they don't win that game without the rebounding of Pablo and Marcigan, who had 14 combined. And LaSalle's going to need their wings to do rebounding more and more if they want to compete against the best of the UAAP. So, again, not perfect games from the supporting cast outside of Cortez and Phillips, but very encouraging if you like DLSU's chances to keep competing the rest of the way in the UAAP. Now, we look at UP stats here. 13 points for Alarcon, 5 of 14 shooting, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. Not the greatest percentage field goal wise, but all around, I thought Harold played a decent game. Fortea had 12 points and 4 of 12 shooting. He had all of his 12 points in the later part of the second half. He had two humongous three pointers at the end of the third quarter that shifted momentum back to UP, and then two more big three pointers in the fourth period, each three, which threatened to have UP run away. What I was surprised by was Jerry Abadiano had 12, all of his 12 points in the first quarter alone, 5 of 10 shooting, then was kind of quiet the rest of the way. He did play 25 minutes, but felt like he wasn't as involved as he should have been given how hot he started in the contest. Francis Nuruka had 12 points and 4 of 10 shooting. Remo got just 7 points and 2 of 10 shooting, so he continues to struggle against LaSalle because remember in the Phil Oil preseason tournament, yes, that second game he hit those two dagger threes against DLSU, but he was struggling for the most part against LaSalle. Um, Gianni Stevens also just 4 points and 1 of 6 shooting. And when you look back at the game tape, and UP will probably not be happy about this, where there were so many wasted opportunities where they tried to slip the ball inside to Naruka or Stevens, and it ended up being a turnover. I think twice the ball sailed out of bounds. And there were two other situations. I think it was Abadiano and Remogat where the ball, they have it in the backcourt. They just have to bring it to their side of the court and it sails out of bounds on bad passes too. And those are some of the wasted opportunities that you can't have if you're UP and you want to win this game. In this contest, UP actually had 8 3 pointers. LaSalle only had 3. Free throws, UP shot better from percentage wise, 11 out of 16. LaSalle, though, dominated them in the paint, 44 points in the paint for DLSU. UP had 24. Second chance points, 17 to 11 advantage for LaSalle. Bench points, 32 to 29 for UP. Perimeter points, that's where UP did most of their damage, 34 to 15. Now, if we look at the game early on, you saw that LaSalle, when they went on a 14-8 lead, they made it a point to attack the paint relentlessly. And the final tally, out of LaSalle's 70 field goal attempts, only 17 were from 3-point range. They wanted to test UP's interior defense. They wanted to test Stevens and Naruko's ability to stop their guards and Phillips from attacking. Early on, it was working to their advantage. Now, UP countered by making the game quicker. Once they did a better job protecting the paint with help from their 3-2 zone defense, they were able to get longer rebounds, run on the break, and that's when UP is dangerous. And for the most part, the first half was a game of speed. LaSalle wanted to slow it down. Whenever you saw Jacob get the ball from the inbound pass, sometimes he would have the ball roll. He would walk, maybe slight jog it up. LaSalle wanted to make it a half court game. LaSalle wanted to be patient with their approach. They wanted it to be a grind out contest. While UP, every chance they got to run, they went for it because that's where UP is at its strongest. Run, gun, push the pace. Alarcon, Abadiano, Remagat, Fortea, these guys spreading out, maybe getting into the big men if they're rim running. And then in the second half, it really became like one of those boxing matches where it's just like blow for blow. LaSalle will maybe go on like a 2 minute spurt where they're playing better, and then UP will counter, and then it became a matter of okay, can you take our run and then respond? And each time a team went on a run, the other team was able to respond, and that's why it felt like one of those classic back and forth games where even you as part of the audience watching the game, you felt how tired the players were. You felt how physical it was. You felt how demanding it was on their bodies. And it was the best of the best playing at the top of college basketball in the country. Now, UP did give LaSalle fits, and I wonder if other teams will start utilizing this more and more by going with a 3-2 zone defense approach. Remember, Ateneo gave LaSalle such a big headache with this in the first round as well. And what that 3-2 zone defense does, especially when you have three lengthy and quick guards like Abadiano, Remagat, Alarcon on top with Alarcon in the middle, is that it prevents Jacob from getting into the paint and penetrating. Tyler Teo was the analyst for broadcasting in this game today, said that one of the best ways LaSalle's offense gets humming is when the guards can get paint touches, because then they can create for themselves. They can have drop off passes to Phillips, kick out to the open shooters. So that 3-2 zone defense was limiting Cortez and the other guys from getting into the paint. And there were so many offensive sequences where 7 seconds left on the shot clock, 8 seconds left on the shot clock, the ball is still out about 26, 27 feet top of the key with Cortez, and they're trying to move the ball. And UP, being the ball hawks that they are, were able to attack passing lanes, blitz a few ball handlers a few times. However, UP, when they did force LaSalle into miscues and mistakes, they just weren't able to capitalize as much as they should have. They had quite a few opportunities actually to extend the lead in the fourth quarter, where if they were able to do that, I thought they would have actually secured a victory. But LaSalle hung in there. LaSalle kept fighting. LaSalle kept getting back in transition. Their transition defense in the first quarter was horrible. It looked like a kind of transition defense that got them to that big 21-point hole against UE. But in the second half, much better. You saw guys running back. You saw guys being physical, putting hands up, blocking shots. And that's going to be something that teams are going to continue attacking LaSalle with. Utilize the zone, get long rebounds after you force jump shots, and beat them in transition. And it's not always going to be perfect for LaSalle, but if they can get back in transition more and quicker, it's going to help limit some of the issues that they face early this UAP season as we're at the halfway point. There were some sequences also in that zone defense of UP where LaSalle tried to slip the ball inside, but when Phillips isn't in the game, yes, Pablo's a good option, but other than that, LaSalle doesn't have many interior weapons to go to. So again, that's one more thing I'm curious about to see if other teams are going to utilize more against DLSU. At the end of the day, it became a shot making final few minutes. Earl Abadam ends up hitting the big shot to counter Fortea's big shot, which could have been the dagger. Then Voris Marasigan crashes the boards. And LaSalle was opportunistic about this. That's why in the second chance points battle, they were also able to do their damage. And none bigger than the 2 points of Voris Marasigan. By the way, quick story on Voris. It was so funny how when LaSalle got the stop on that Naruka drive, Boris grabbed the rebound and started flexing, and then but the game and the play was still going on. Then he saw two UP guards, I think it was Alarcon and Torres, who went to him right away, tried to hawk the ball, and then Boris got the ball out to Cortez. I just found that funny. Boris always plays with so much passion and energy. Um, but that putback was big. And that's the kind of place that I'm sure the coaching staff of DLSU wants to see from him. They know he can score, they know he can be physical, they know he can attack. Now, sometimes he loses the ball when he does attack, but if he can crash the boards, rebound like the way he did, hustle back on defense, make winning plays outside of scoring, then he's going to earn the coaching staff's trust more, and he's going to earn a bigger role in this team, like with Pablo, because Pablo was the top scorer of the game, but what he did contributed way beyond what the stat sheet shows. They do not win the game without Pablo. They don't win the game without Galiana, without Abadam. They don't win the game without the rest of the supporting cast helping Phillips and Cortez do their thing. Ultimately, long-term implications for UP, this isn't really a loss to be super worried about. They didn't play excellent basketball. To be fair, they also didn't play excellent basketball against FU last time. So let's see if they clean it up. I believe they're facing NU on Wednesday, the league leading National University Bulldogs. The only team to beat NU so far in the UAP is UP in the first round encounter in a game where NU ironically led by double digits at one point. So it's going to be a quick turnaround for UP, a lot of stuff to clean up. And knowing Coach Gold, Coach Tom, they're going to hammer the finer details to their boys in practices. And if you're LaSalle, this is a statement, not just to the rest of the UAP, but to themselves that Kean is out, Mason is out, but we're not out. We're not out for the count. We're not down for the count. We're still here. And the UAP is wide open. I mean, it's NU 6-1, UST 5-2. UST just lost to Adamson, right? That was a bit surprising. And kudos to Adamson. And then third is UP because of quotient. Fourth is LaSalle. Ateneo is fifth. Suddenly, Ateneo from 1 to 5 in like less than 2 weeks. They're 4-3, all of them. Adamson is 3-4. Right behind them, they can still be there in the final four chase. FEU is 2-5. And trust me, people at FEU are confident they're gonna have a better record in the second round. And they have every reason to be confident because some of their losses in the first round could have turned to wins. They would be in the final four chase too, right? The only team I can say for sure is out is UE. But 1-7, it's all up for grabs. It's all up for grabs. Now, ultimately, I think we're gonna see two of those teams slowly fade away. But that doesn't mean they're not gonna be competitive. That doesn't mean that they're not gonna be interesting. And they're gonna put up a fight. They definitely are. Now, that was the first part of this podcast. Stay tuned for the second part. It's 1:54 in the morning right now, but I feel the need to do more work. Gotta be that Cooper's coffee that's running through me. Always got my Cooper's coffee ready for me when I get home for that extra energy because it's UAP season, and many of you know when it's UAP season, it's just a lot of excitement, a lot of fun stuff in the air, and I can't wait for the second round to start. Now, don't go anywhere because in the second part, we'll be talking to Diego Dario to recap the first round some more, and also we'll be talking a bit about his role with Adidas and what to expect from Adidas's plans for Philippine basketball for the rest of 2025 and beyond. We'll be right back. Okay, we're now back and joined by Diego Dario. Diego, thanks so much for joining me, man. It's really great to finally have you back on the podcast. It's always insightful to speak with you, and I'm just happy you're here.
What's up, Naveen? Thank you so much for having me. Finally, we're able to align our schedules for this. It's gonna be a
I
good one.
know. Your schedule must be so busy Monday to Sunday, playing the MPBL, doing broadcasting work, doing your work for Adidas. How are you scheduling everything? How are you like managing everything, man?
Well, I'm trying, but I'm just happy that it's still around basketball, everything that I do. So as you mentioned, MPBL is still hooping. We're in the playoffs right now. For Adidas, it's still also around sport, around basketball, and then my TV work is still around basketball. So the sport that we all love, I'm blessed to do, and get a job that actually is around the sport that we love.
Ball is life for sure. But also
Yes,
you
sir.
have a long committed relationship and you're still finding time to hang out with your girl. Of course, we still need
Of
all of
course,
us need
that's the
time.
priority, man.
That's the number one priority. Exactly. But I'm happy you're here, Diego. Hey Diego, with all the work that you're doing, you probably need coffee or matcha every now and then to get that extra energy, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Coffee is definitely a staple in my daily routine.
Hey, how many cups a day do you have?
I just limit it to one actually, just because if I go more than that, I'll have a hard time sleeping in the afternoon. I make sure it's like in the morning. No late afternoon coffee for me.
I see, I see. Well, have you ever tried Cooper's Coffee House by any chance?
Not yet, but
Oh
I would love to
man.
try that. Yeah.
I got you. I'll make sure to send you some GCs that you can use. Cooper's Coffee House. They give options, coffee and non-coffee, actually. So if in the afternoon you're looking for another yummy drink, it might be somewhere you go to for choices. They have a brown butter latte that's awesome. They
Ooh.
just recently released a brown butter cold brew. I personally love their iced matcha. I also like the ube latte, and they've got stores opening up left and right. They just opened in Alabang. They're opening in BGC. So I'll definitely get you to try that one time. And of course, a big thank you to our friends over at Cooper's Coffee House for providing coffee enthusiasts of the Navs Effect podcast community with reasons to try different caffeinated drinks and non-caffeinated drinks. Shout out to our friends over there. So the eggs, I guess we start with a simple question to discuss the first round of the UAP. What's been the most surprising part for you? Because there's so many options, right? I mean, there are some aspects that shouldn't come as a big surprise. Like, for example, I'm telling people what UST is doing now. They're 5-1 as we're recording this on Friday. They might be 6-1 or 5-2 by the end of the weekend. It shouldn't be a surprise if you watch them in the preseason and how they were playing. It shouldn't be a surprise how good NU has been playing, how good Ateneo has been also. Now, they've been on a bit of a slide recently, but One thing that I would say is a bit surprising is how Lasalas played, and now they've been kind of hit by the injury bug, shall we say. UP, not a surprise that they've bounced back. But to you, what's been the most eye-opening aspect of round one so far?
I think just the fact that any game, you really don't know what's gonna happen in terms of the result, in terms of how teams are gonna play. Because this whole first round, we've seen teams beat, let's say NU just beat who did NU beat Ateneo? Is that correct? Or
And you, and you and
no,
Ateneo
Ateneo
is tomorrow.
hasn't.
They
Yeah,
just
yeah,
beat
yeah.
LaSalle. Yeah, they just beat LaSalle.
So NU beat LaSalle, but then NU lost to UP. So these are a couple of factors wherein matchups are so important in the UAP right now. There's no like out outliers when it comes to, oh, this is gonna be the number one team, or UP is gonna be the number two, and then Ateneo is gonna be number three. It's always about matchups, and the matchups usually determine what kind of game is gonna happen, depending on the matchups, especially here in the first round. So, you'll never know, like, okay, UP is gonna be winning against a team like FU. They just beat FU by just 3 points or maybe 2 points, right? So it's super unpredictable this season, and I love it. I think the fans love it as well.
Absolutely. You know, one more important factor that I tell people when they watch college ball is matchups matter. Like
For
certain
sure.
teams match up well with certain squads. Like I think it's fair to say that if UP faces a team with a really efficient and really physically imposing FSA, you might see them in more close games, like they were against FEU when they faced Conate. But when they face a team against FSAs who might still be inexperienced or doesn't have quite the elite rim protection other squads offer, like an Ateneo, for example, they might be able to be more efficient attacking the rim, especially with their guards and guys like Francis Naruka. So, if you had to run down each team right now and just basically summarize what their identity and personality is based from how they're playing, how would you classify those?
Right. So I think just to make it simple here, if we start off with UP, since you already talked about UP, right? This is the first time that UP in a very long time wherein they don't have that anchor in the paint defensively and the guy who can like dominate the boards offensively. So the past seasons they've had Malik Diouf when they won, of course, season 84, and then in season 87 when they won that championship against LaSalle, it was QMB who was that guy for UP. This time around, they don't have that presence. So it's gonna really look different. And that's what we've seen this first round, wherein, their defense is more of a dynamic defense rather than, a big guy standing there in the paint. Although, they still have solid big men in, Gani Stevens, Francis Noruka, but it's a different dynamic. They're more, you know, they can switch, especially Francis Naruka, but they're not the rim protectors that QMB and Malik Diouf are, and that's why we're seeing a different UP team, but they're still effective just because their defense is so dynamic. They're scrambling, they're switching, and they're really. I think they would match up more, as you mentioned, with more dynamic teams like LaSalle, like Ateneo, but with solid FSAs, like you mentioned, it's not going to be the same because they're going to have to help and put two guys on post presence guys like Collins Akowe, right? If you put two on them, there's gonna be one man open, and that's gonna mean open shots for other teams. So it's a different UP team, but something that I still look forward in the second round in the playoffs.
Now, how about the other squads like Ateneo, LaSalle, UST? If you had to summarize it in, like, let's say one sentence for each team, what pops out immediately? How would you classify it?
Right. For Ateneo, I think solid half court team. They're
Mm.
not the best in
Slow
terms
down the
of.
pace.
Yes, they're slowing down the pace. They run a lot of half court sets, and they are solid defensively when it comes to the half court. Although we saw a different Ateneo team against UST because they tried to outrun Collins Akowe, so they went for more fast break opportunities. But on a regular basis, not against UST. I think there was one game against Adamson. They didn't even have one fast break point, zero fast break points the whole game, but they still won.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that game against LaSalle too. They realized right away you do not allow Jacob and Kean to run on the breaks and get momentum and play with pace, and you can control that game against DLSU. And they were like hunting matchups. Dom was
Yes.
targeting Mason and Mike, attacking them, even if that meant late in the shot clock. Um, with UST, I like how you brought them up and how Ateneo had wanted to outrun them, which I felt, yes, it looked like it would work for stretches, but also kind of played to UST's advantage because UST loves to run, loves to run. We had Coach Juno Soler a few days ago on this podcast, and he told us straight up that they don't call any plays for their
Yep.
team. They're just like, Kyle, Fortsky, you guys decide. Nick, you guys decide what you want to do. Run as much as you want to. We trust your decision making. We trust how you attack matchups. And with UST, I'm sure you've noticed this too. They space the floor so well
Yes,
with
sir.
those
Yes,
corner
sir.
shooters, with Chrysostomo, with Lemit. Sometimes it could be Fortsky and Kyle in the corners when Nick tries to go to work. And that, when you have vets who play with such great spacing, who is anchored by an FSA like a Kowe, it's just so hard to beat them, right?
That's right. I mean, with UST, Coach Juno hit it on the spot, and he's the perfect resource person for this. They really call very simple plays, right? Either it's gonna be a ball screen between Kyle Paranada or Fortsky with Collins Akoe, or a post up for Collins Akoe, or if Nick, likes a matchup, he's gonna go ISO on him. And the others are just spaced in the corners, guys like Amiel Asido, Jello Crisostomo. And as Coach Juno mentioned, they trust those vets, guys like Fortsky, guys like Nick, because they're so special offensively. And if you talk about offense, number one so far is UST. I think they're scoring over 90 a game almost. And that's high for college basketball, right? And if you notice UST really runs. Like every time they have an opportunity, they try to run and they try to go for fast break threes. At the end, I mentioned that they tried to outrun them, although that's UST's game. I think they did it just because so that Collins Akoe will, hopefully for them, would gas out. But he didn't. He played 51 minutes out of the 55 minutes in that triple OT game. That's insane. And shout out to UST's conditioning coach, whoever that guy is. I mean, that's amazing. Amazing performance by the team.
My God, and he had zero fouls, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's the
crazy.
discipline, right? Yeah.
The discipline is insane. Now, just going back to UST a bit, I think it's time to maybe get your board out that you said you
Oh, for
wanted to
sure.
draw in.
For sure.
So
For
why
sure.
don't you kind of diagram for us how UST sets their players up in the now they do run a lot, like we said, but there are also
Mhm.
times in the half court where they can be dangerous. How do
Right.
you how do you see them running things? Like if you had to diagram how UST's offense looks.
Okay, I think one way to describe their offense, as you mentioned, they're very well spaced. So I'll
Yeah.
just talk about their half court ball screen offense and how they operate things, right? So I'll draw it up first and then I'll show it to everyone, right? So say we have a three guy here, four guy here, Portsky, Collins, and then we have one guy, a shooter here, Nick Cabanero. All right. Not sure if you can see it. Can you guys
I
see
can
it?
see it. I like the
Right.
Adamson board. Gift from Coach
Yeah,
Nash.
shout out, Adamson. He gave this to me last season when I also had a pod with Nico Ramos, who's outside the country right now. But shout out Naveen also for letting me get on this pod.
Of course, man. Thanks
So
for being here.
so right here, we have this is the four guy. This is probably Jello Crisostomo right here. Stretch four, he can shoot the three. Loves the corner. Three guy, I'd say this is Amiel Asido, a shooter for USD. And then you have Nick Cabanera right here on the wing. And then they usually run that two-man game here with Fortsky Padrigao and Collins Akoe, right? So if you notice, they're very well spaced. What this does is when they're both in the corners, the defense is all the way out. As you know, since they're gonna have to guard the shooters, right? So they can't really pack the paint for Collins. So I'll draw it up right here, wherein this is Fortsky, and he's gonna run a two-man game. This is the screen by Collins Akoe, right?
Mm-mm.
Fortski's so good at letting his man hit the screen. So when he uses this ball screen, right? He's gonna use this ball screen. Two guys will go to Fortski just because he's a special offensive player, right? So he's gonna have two guys on him. So he's gonna have two guys here. The ball is still with him, right? And then Collins will dive all the way to the paint here. So what that does is all the guys of these shooters, so the guys of these shooters will have to help on Collins Akoe just because he's so big,
He takes
right?
up so much space. Yeah.
He takes up so if you don't give help, that's an easy pocket pass from Fortsky Padrigal, who's the best playmaker in the UAP right now, and that's an easy dunk, right? Now, what's special with Collins, even as a rookie, when he gets that ball from Fortsky right here, he's a willing passer. All the defense will help, and that is why we see so many open shots in the corner for guys like Amiel Asido and Jello Crisostomo. So that's
That could
just a
even
basic.
that
Yeah.
could even allow Nick to cut from the slot, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
Forsky
sir.
being the playmaker could give him a quick handoff and
Yes,
he
sir.
gets a run to the rim. Now, I am curious though, Diego, from the defensive strategy of the play you just ran, wouldn't it make more sense? And have you seen other teams do this where you just switch everything UST tries to run and try to live with UST attacking the mismatches, like Nick maybe going one on one or Collins going for a post up against a smaller guy, rather than putting two at the ball and leaving one of those deadly shooters open. Because at this point, I'd rather like Collins or someone from UST works for their baskets through ISO rather than an open Chrysostom or Asido jump shot from outside.
Right. I think UST is so well coached that they've found counters for a lot of these kinds of defenses, right? So what I mentioned when I was growing up, the defense there was really like an aggressive ball screen defense on Fortsky, wherein there's really two on the
Like a
ball and
hard
then they
show,
force for
yeah.
help, like a hard show, right? But as you mentioned, if they switch, let's say UP's up against UST, right?
Mm,
Let and Fortsky is guarded by Ray Remogat,
okay.
right? And then Collins sets a ball screen. Imagine they switch and then Ray Remogat will end up with Collins
Mm.
Akoe, right? Although they
S-
can do triple switch, they can help off of him, but that's an advantage right away for Collins. He's just so big, right? And
right.
even if some other bigger guard comes and help for Ray Remogat, he's just so big that switching for me is very risky against
Ha,
UST.
but what if, let's say, you put Remogat on one of the corner shooters and you put a
Mm-hmm.
bigger guy on Fortsky, like an
Maybe like
Alarcon?
Alarcon or
Yeah.
Baila.
Or Baila, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Baila, who's becoming a really elite defender in the UAP, like a Baila or Alarcon. And now, if you get the switch, you still have a mismatch of Alarcon versus Collins or Baila versus Collins. But then at the same time, too, wouldn't you rather at that point sending a double to Collins after the switch and testing his ability to find open players?
Right. And I think he's kind of shown us, especially in that LaSalle game, that he's actually a good passer off the post. So
And
when
he's a
he
rookie. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. So and he's 19 years old. It's amazing to see how his development was obviously from high school to college. But yeah, if you send a double on Collins Akoe, UST basically they have four shooters. They have Kyle Parinada or Fortsky, Nick Cabanero, Amiel Asido, and Jello Crisostomo. So like think Junmar Fajardo in San Miguel, wherein they have
Mm.
four shooters. If they
Lassiter
attract
and
the
all, yeah.
double, and then there's gonna be like it's gonna be a domino from there because the goal of UST, what they're so good at is putting two on the ball, whether that's through a ball screen or on the post, Collins attracts the double. And when there's two on the ball, there's going to be one open man every single time. And most of the time they find it. It's just about hitting the shots. I think they're just very well coached. I don't think you can play like this without a lot of film.
Exactly. You know what I like the most about UST, and a few days ago I said that I think they're the best team in the UAAP right now, and I
Mm.
still feel that way at the end of the first round. Is they just have the most problems that you have to kind of think solutions to in terms of mismatches. That's number one. Number two is there are a lot of veterans on this team.
Mhm.
Paranada, Padrigao, Caballero. Collins does not play like a rookie. And when you have your leaders setting the example, setting the tone, it's easier for the role players to fill in the gaps, right? And then the third thing is they have counters to your counters, like you just explained.
Yes,
But
sir.
given all of that, which team would you say is best equipped to defend UST? Because right now, I'm kind of leaning towards NU. Now, don't get me wrong, NU likes playing Yumamoy, Garcia,
Mhm.
and Enriquez, which could be like a mismatch, for example, in a switch, like we just talked about. But when you look at NU's wings, Manansala, Santiago, Figueroa, the bigs, Palacielo, Padrones, John, there's a lot of length that can kind of and to cover ground against teams with great spacing, you need good length.
I totally agree. And there's a reason why NU beat UST, right? Number one, because Omar John matches up with Collins Okoye pretty well.
Yep.
And
The
as
coaches know Collins, by the way.
yes,
Collins was
sir.
from
Yes,
that
sir. I was
program.
about to
Yep.
say that they developed Collins. They know his tendencies, they know what he likes, what he does not like, and they tested him. You see the whole NU bench when Colin Sacco is near that bench that they're talking to I don't know what they're saying, but like Collins is laughing and then so like there's that relationship there and they probably know Collins the best out of all the UAP teams. And that's number one, Omar John and matching up with Colin Sakoy with NU. And as you mentioned, they have guys like Jake Figueroa, guys like Jello Santiago, right? And then they have Manansala as well. These guys can switch a lot of UST's actions,
Yep.
and they can still guard the fast guards. They can guard post guys, right? So they can cover ground. They're athletic as well. And I think what NU did pretty well against UST was not really allow UST to have a lot of fast break opportunities. They
Yes.
were so good in their transition defense, whether that's through attacking the boards and getting offensive rebounds by the big guys in Palacielo and Omar Jan, or guys like Figueroa and Manansala sprinting back and not allowing UST to have easy baskets in transition. I think that's what they did pretty well. That's why they also won that game against UST.
Absolutely. And they do a great job sending weak side help when you least
Mhm.
expect it. A sign of a Coach Jeff Napa coach team, which has always been
Yes.
sound defensively. Now, we want to touch a bit on NU, but first I want to talk about Ateneo. Now, they started 4-0. They looked wonderful, especially in that LaSalle game, save for the final quarter.
Mhm.
And since then, they've kind of slid to straight losses. The first against UP, like we said, I think UP is a bad matchup for them. The second, the game against UST, that was their third game in 6 to 7 days. And
Yeah.
it became a triple overtime game, elite competition, and they nearly had the chance to win as well. Now, a key component so far is Divine Adili because there have been games he's looked wonderful and exceptional for the team. There have been games where foul trouble has plagued him or ball security issues have kind of been an issue where quite a few times, especially in that UP game, and those UP guards are ball hawks. They're gonna swipe at you. They're gonna test the strength of your wrist and hand. They're gonna just try to get the ball out of your hands and force turnovers. And Adili had some ball security issues. But we've also seen Ateneo run lineups where Ladi or Lazaro is the five or the tallest guy on the
Mm.
court. And the spacing just looks great too in those situations. They have lineups with Bahay, Escobar, Ladi, Lazaro, and then insert someone like an Espina who's become a reliable corner shooter this season. What are the pros and cons, Diego, for you when Ateneo runs a lineup like that? Where yes, it's small, the size is an issue, but you try to counter some of that size issue with spacing and offensive efficiency.
Right. What I noticed with Ateneo when they have that lineup where Divine Adili is out and Kaimani Ladi usually will play the five or even Josh Lazaro, they usually go on that patented 3-2 matchup zone. Right? They
Yes.
don't usually go for their man-to-man defense when that five is on the floor. And what that
Tuano
does is,
also, right? With that length up top.
yes,
Yeah.
right. So what that does is, it kind of cancels out the fact that you can post up guys like Josh Lazaro on the post because they're already in a zone, right? So usually teams will run their zone offense and they can cover ground, right? That 3-2, it kind of shape shifts into a 2-3 when it goes to the corner, right? And usually in that 3-2 zone, Dom Escobar is the one on top
Mm.
of that 3-2 zone. So Dom Escobar, for me, one of the most elite defenders when it comes to guarding smaller guys or guarding bigger guys. He's so versatile defensively that that 3-2 zone, if you're a guard and you see Dom Escobar, you won't try to you won't try to like play him one on one. You'll move the ball and find different ways to attack. So that's what I see with Ateneo. But offensively, they run beautiful half court sets wherein they have so many different options that lead to other options depending on what the defense does.
One way to not exactly hide, but remedy your lack of rim protection is elite perimeter defense. I mean,
Mhm.
if you don't want someone to score on you in the perimeter, you prevent them from attacking. I mean, if you don't want someone to score on you in the paint, you prevent them from getting past the perimeter to begin with. It worked so well against LaSalle. You saw so many situations where LaSalle was like 6, 7 seconds left in the shot clock and the ball was still out there in the perimeter and it had to turn into an ISO play. But then you also saw the game against UP where UP ran a lot of off ball motion and off ball action to kind of get the zone moving in different places. So then they can find the seams to attack. And
Mhm.
you saw Ateneo kind of shift to a man after a little while. And then Harold Alarcon did his thing, Noruka did his thing. Now, on offense, though, can they go the whole season with a lot of minutes of having Ladi or Lazaro at the five? I get that the zone has worked in many occasions, but eventually UAP coaches are gonna scout it and figure it out. So the question for Ateneo becomes: after this strategy worked really well to start the season, can it be something they maintain the rest of the way, or will they have to reinvent themselves a little bit to keep opponents guessing?
I think this zone, we don't usually see Coach Tab actually running a zone, especially in my time where they had like a solid lineup, a very complete lineup, guys like 30, Matt, Ange Kwame. They don't really run a zone just because they're so solid man to man. But this time around, he really has to play that zone most of the time because, as you mentioned, without Divine and Didi, they don't really have that rim protector. Yeah, Kaimani Ladi is a great rim protector as a help defender, but not on the post, right? So I think with Ateneo, as you mentioned, offensively, I think they're more dynamic when they play that small five, small lineup, and they run so many different sets for Kaimani Ladi basically. And if Kaimani Ladi's hitting shots offensively, I don't think it's going to be a problem for Ateneo because he's the number one option for them so far. A lot of their plays are being run for him.
Now let's go to NU. A lot of their actions start with post up entries for Palacielo or
Yes.
maybe John. Once in a while, you'll have a wing like Figueroa try to back down somebody smaller. But they love to have plays where they load up the weak side, and then you have two guys playing ball screen action on the strong side. And then suddenly all these guys are moving from the weak side, moving around, cross screens, cutting, and they try to confuse the defense and find openings and take efficient shots. They shot 55% against DLSU, which is not easy to do. And you're trying to attack Mike Phillips, right? Although recently LaSalle's defense has been leaking. So, do you want to diagram for us how NU tends to execute some of their plays?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll put PJ Palacielo on the post, and then I'll put John, Steve Nash, and then a big here, no a shooter, any shooter, and then Jake Figueroa. Okay, so I'll draw it up right here. I'm not sure if you guys see
Yeah,
it.
we see it.
Right. So they usually put the ball in PJ Palacielo's hands here, and then they're gonna see if the read here for NU is the defense just playing one on one or are they sending help,
Mm.
right? So usually there's gonna be different actions here for NU. I don't exactly know what they are, but usually it's gonna be a screen. Usually there's gonna be a screen for Steve Nash here or any shooter. It's like a flare screen for the shooter. And then the weak side, guys like Jake Figueroa or um Jello Santiago will cut here, do a 45 cut.
45, yeah.
Now, yeah, no, what that does is they're gonna see right here if the defense is playing man or they're dropping to a zone, right? Because
Right.
if they're playing man, they're just gonna follow their men here, they're gonna follow their men here, and then even if Jake Figueroa cuts in the baseline, if they are matched up, it means it's 1-1 for PJ Palacielo, right?
Mm-mm.
And if it's 1-1 for PJ Palacielo, for me, he's one of the
You'll
best
take your
post players.
chances,
Yeah,
yeah.
but best post players in the UAP. He has great footwork. He has a soft touch around the basket. And if it's 1-1, usually PJ takes his matchup right here. But when they send help, when they send double, NU's so good at finding the open guys and reading it. And it's a sign of a well coached team, a team that does film a lot, and that's why NU's been very effective on the post. But for me, NU in the fourth quarter, it's Jake Figueroa time. They just run a simple high ball screen for him, and then he just goes to work.
Goes to work. And you know what I really like about them this year too is the emergence of Paul Francisco. And Paul
Oh
Francisco
yeah, for sure. I
isn't
forgot
like
about
a
him.
he's not a 15, 16 point a game guy, but the fact that he's up to his averages and he's become a bit of a reliable scorer just gives them more spacing. And spacing has been an issue for NU for a while.
Yes.
But with the improved outside shooting of Francisco, Santiago, even Enriquez, who I think is almost at 50% this season from 3 point range. It just gives Palacielo more room to operate. It helps that Omar John is really a veteran now and his basketball maturity has increased tenfold compared to the last time we saw him in the UAP. And they're not super deep in terms of talent or pure explosive ability, but they're deep in terms of we need guys to fill in certain roles. So we can just
Yes.
plug and play guys. This is your role. And Coach Jeff has coached them in a way that they play their roles. They're good at their roles. He always says, right, in press conferences, I tell my players, be a star player in your role. Don't be a star player in general. Be a star player in your role. Do you see a lot of that with NU this season?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the way Coach Jeff has built this team, if you think about it, they're typically kind of the same players in each position. So you have Steve Nash Enriquez, who's a pesky defender, and then who's a great ball screen player. Usually Humamoy or Tebol Garcia comes in. They're not as great as Steve Nash when it comes to pressuring defense, but they're solid defenders. They put pressure and they're good ball screen players, right? So you have 3 point guards who basically play the same role. And you have PJ Palacielo, the post presence for NU, and then off the bench is Padrones, which is basically PJ Palacielo light. Right? He can
Mm-mm.
also post up. He's a big guy who can bang bodies down low. And then you guys have NU has Jake Figueroa, Manansala, Jello Santiago, who are just dogs inside that court, right? They're solid wing defenders. And then, as you mentioned, Paul Francisco, that knockdown shooter for them, and he also plays decent defense as well. So, I think they, as you mentioned, it's plug and play. They're not that deep when it comes to the talent, but they're deep when it comes to the roles that they play.
Fantastic. And that's one of the reasons why they have a great record at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
first round. And, to me with NU, it's just we've seen this script a lot before where they start the first round strong, they kind of tail off at the end of the second round, and then you see by the final four they just kind of ran out of gas. Like
Mm.
season 85, they ran out of gas against UP at the final four game. They were dominated by LaSalle in the season 86 final four. So can they flip that script this season where they're on a high going to the final four and keep that momentum going? Only time will tell, but that to me is the only question about NU. Can they win? Can you win the big games when it matters most? We know you guys can compete against everyone in the UAP. Now, just prove you can win the big games against the best. Speaking of the so and so called best, DLSU was, I would say, the favorite for many entering this UAP season. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of comments now like, oh, nasa na yung mga Lasal niyo? Lahat kayo, favorite Lasal, ganyan, ganyan before the season. But I mean, it wasn't like that wasn't warranted with the way they played in the offseason, with the talent they had coming in. We all know the UAP is different from the offseason, but we've also seen years where offseason performance tends to give an idea what to expect when the UAP actually comes. So is it surprising to you the way DLSU has struggled at times to be consistent? Because yes, they escaped UE, but even that, their defense just looked, sorry for the term, but there's so many times their defense looked pathetic in that game. I mean, the transition defense was bad. The rim protection was, just on or off, not consistent. The offense, it feels like they play better when they decide screw it with the plans and the plays, and that they just play with instinct and flow, kind of like how UST does it. Just give the ball to Jacob, give the ball to Kean before he got hurt, and just let them go, right? Don't try to police them too much. And one more thing I noticed too is one of their best offensive weapons is having Mike attack the rim. Just because he's
Mm.
so strong, so athletic, so quick, you'll end up sending him to the foul line a lot of times, and a lot of times he'll score on you. But the moments when Mike misses and he ends up being the guy trailing behind in the fast break, it feels like an automatic 2 or 3 points for the opponent every time. What's the issue with the transition defense of LaSalle, and what have been the reasons for some of their leakage on the defensive end of the floor?
Right. I think what we have to kind of talk about with LaSalle is obviously they lost a guy like KQ, right? And the thing is, when you have a guy like KQ who's 6'5", can play 2 to 4 and even 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, all positions. They can be creative with their offense. We saw that last year. Like they put KQ top of the key, and then he'll play two-man game with some of the guards. They'll put KQ on the post, right? Or they'll put KQ as the screener and not the ball handler, right? They can be so creative just because KQ is such a great offensive weapon that it's so tough to guard, right? So tough to guard for a lot of teams. But this season, they have talent. Guys like Kean, Jacob Cortez, but their offense will really be centered around two-man game ball screen, right? And nothing else, right? Maybe you can put Mike Phillips on the post sometimes and have some weak side action, but most of the time it's gonna be Jacob and Kean before he got hurt, handling the ball and having two-man action, right? The thing is with that, defenses can read what they're trying to do on the
Yep.
ball screen easily, right? They can adjust. Let's say first quarter they're on drop, and then Jacob is killing, right? They're on drop because there's so much space for Jacob. Second quarter they can just trap Jacob and then let the bigs, guys like Luis Pablo maybe or Mike Phillips, be that decision maker for the team, right? So the defense can kind of dictate where the offense will go in terms of how LaSalle is running their offense, right? And defensively, for me, if your offense is struggling,
Mm.
LaSalle can't deploy their patented full court
Press.
press wherein Mike Phillips is on the top of that press, right? So if you're struggling offensively, you're missing shots, you're gonna be in transition all the time. As you mentioned, they're having a tough time transition defense, right? But if they're making shots at a high rate, their field goal is at a high rate, they're getting to the free throw line, they can set up their defense and match
Mm-mm.
up pretty well. Right. So I
Yeah.
think that's all connected. Their offense will be connected to the defense, and hopefully they try to figure it out even without Mason and Kean in their lineup. I think it's gonna be the wings that will be have to step up for LaSalle. Guys like Makalalan,
Earl.
Earl Abadam, right? These guys will really have to step up. Dungo had a solid game one time, and they have to do that because the defenses will focus on Jacob and Mike moving forward.
Agree. And it's ironic because they're not playing Nuanco much. When you look at the roster, they don't have a lot of size
Mm,
suddenly. I mean, the other game against UE, now they got away with it because Pablo's effort in overtime was pretty inspiring. But when Mike had cramps, they had Luis Pablo guarding Precious Momaway, who had like 42
yes.
points. And you saw UE, they were just like, let's get Precious the ball, let's get Precious the ball, right? Now, to be fair, the double team, the weak side help was there in time, and I think there were two straight possessions where Precious missed underneath, which allowed LaSalle to win via comeback. But against other teams, like we talked about with Ateneo, they're going to find ways to exploit that. So maybe we see LaSalle employ a bit of a zone defense as well. We'll see. However, you know this, Diego, that when the defense doesn't have a lot of size, it's easier to penetrate against them. It's easier to
Mm,
shoot over them because the closeouts suddenly don't look as intimidating. But I think the solution starts with the offense too, which brings me to my next question where now that there's no Mason, now that there's no Kean, the initial action is okay, LaSalle is screwed. It's time to panic, right? Because they lost two of their talented guys. But, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Sometimes when you lose guys in the team, the pecking order or the system becomes a little less cloudy, right?
Hmm.
So yes, that means more responsibility on Mike and Jacob as ball handlers or as initial the initial players you start the attack with an offense. Yes, that means Abadam, who was solid against UE, will have to step up more, be more of a scorer. Same for Goliena, same for Makalalag, same for Dungo, maybe the same for Kines, maybe the same for Daep. But with that clarity, sometimes there could be opportunity. Am I assuming too much here, or does that make sense?
I think you're making a good point here. I think, Jacob, sometimes he would take a back seat for Kian when Kian is playing a great game. He'll play a little bit off ball, but this time around, it's gonna be Jacob who's gonna be the primary playmaker. The offense will start with him,
Yep.
and maybe Mike Phillips setting him a ball screen, and it's gonna be up to Jacob to make the right play. And guys like Earl Abadam, Doy Dungo, JC Makalalag, what they have to do is to be ready for those opportunities when Jacob kicks the ball out to them, whether to catch and shoot, attack the closeout, and then find the open man. So I think let's see how things will go. I really think it's Jacob time right now, and
It
I think all the
is.
fans are for sure also expecting the same. And Jacob is already experienced. He's seen so many kinds of defenses against him that I feel like he would know what to do in certain situations.
He I've been saying this since the season started. They're at their best when the ball is in his hands. And that's
Yes,
not to
for sure.
say that Kean wasn't effective because actually before Kean got hurt, ironically, he had like a stretch where he scored like 7 or 9 straight points, and we were seeing the attacking Kean that we saw in the offseason, which was why the timing of the injury was so bad. And by the way, we send our well wishes to Kean. We wish him the best. But when you look at Jacob and how he can read ball screen defenses, how he reads the floor, how he said in the offseason that he doesn't like being too giggle. I mean, in the press conference after the game, he
Yeah.
doesn't like being too giggle. He always stays stoic and calm, never too high, never too low. And part of that translates to how he's able to read the defense. Okay, you're on
Yes.
drop. I can take this midi pull up. I can hit the step back 3 pointer. You're gonna switch against me. I'm gonna try to run past the bigger defender and get to the rim. You're sending a double. I'm gonna kick this out. It's just a matter now of the other teammates really stepping up and making the right plays.
Right. I think when Jacob was um talking about being too giggle, I think that's also connected to the pace that he plays with. If you
Mm-mm.
see Jacob, he is never in a rush. You can never even if you're full court pressuring him 92 feet, Jacob is still as cool as his dad. He's still that guy. He's using his body to protect the ball, never in a rush, always reading the defense, and it's just a matter of him either making or taking and making the shots that the defense gives. So I think maturity wise, Jacob's ready for this kind of a role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's gonna be interesting to see how else the rest of the season plays out for LaSalle.
The
We're
challenge
recording
though
this.
also Jacob, if he's gonna have extended minutes, he's gonna play 30-35 minutes. He still has to be at least decent on defense. Because
Oh
he's gonna
yeah.
do all the work offensively and it's tough to like work both ends for 35 minutes. The conditioning has to be elite at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's also when you need the other guys to step up and relieve him of some
Yes.
minutes, right? If Doi Dungo is having a good game, maybe give him an extra run. If Kines can show that he's ready for the college level, maybe you trust in him a little more. I mean, at this point, if you're LaSalle, you kind of have to throw some stuff on the wall and see what will work given the players that you lost. Now, let's talk about the other three teams who I would say are not in the Final Four race right now: Adamson, UE, and FEU. Some quick thoughts on them in the first round and what you expect to see from them in the second round.
I think for FEU, let's talk about FEU. their record does not show how good of a team they are actually and how talented their team is. I think their record is currently 1-5 as we are recording. But I think 3 or 4 games they've lost only by one possession. They lost to UP by three. I think they lost to
LaSalle by
LaSalle
2,
by two, and I
Ateneo by
think
3.
Ateneo by three. Right, all
And they
close
were
games.
and even UST, they were like tied with UST midway through the fourth quarter, if I'm not
Yes, and
mistaken.
then UST just had a big run
Yeah.
because of Nick and Kyle just going off. But FEU, man, like if they won a couple of games, I think it's going to be a totally different scenario for the whole UAP right now. But let's talk about their team, right? Like, Janre Pasol is, I think, averaging 19, 6 and 4 plus 2 at 2.2 steals a game. He's
Craziness.
doing everything. Like, and this is just a second year guy, right? We've seen Coach Sean Chambers last year give him literally all the green light, all the um room to make mistakes. And I think that's so crucial for a lot of younger players as a basketball player, right? For you to be allowed to make mistakes so you can learn. And we've seen Janry Pasol learn from the things in his first year and then apply all the learnings here in the second year we're in. He's a great 3-point shooter. I think he's top 10 3-point percentage wise. I think number one in assists. So I think Janry Pasol is taking a huge leap and it's just exciting. The way he plays is just exciting. I'd say at this point he's the better all for me right now. Shout out to my teammate Alvin. You're the better scorer, but January is a complete player for me.
How does it help when you got a coach like Coach Sean Chambers, who every time you see him, you know, every idea you get of how he coaches the team is he just tries to empower the players as much as possible.
I mean, that's huge. If you're a young guy and you have a coach that trusts you, whether you miss late game free throws or you have like 5 turnovers and still trusts you, that's so huge, right? And January Pascal did not just take that trust and not take advantage of it. He got the trust and then he made the most out of it. It's one thing to get all the minutes and produce empty numbers, right? But now he's getting the minutes, he's making the right decisions, and he's producing quality numbers and efficient too, not just, you know, garbage numbers.
Absolutely. January Pasol, by the way, we're recording this Friday, October 17, 18.5 points a
Sheesh.
game, which is pretty good. And by the way, just a quick note on PJ Palasiello, 47% from the field. Jacob Cortez is 46% from the field.
Efficient.
As we're recording, is super efficient. 3-point percentage, Steve Nash Enriquez is actually 50%. He leads the league.
Wow.
Abate is 44%. January Pasol is 35%, but that's on high volume. So you got to give him credit for that
Yes.
as well. Wacky Espina, shout out to him, 40% on 15 shot attempts. So good job for the youngster. Just looking at some quick stats here, real quick. Your boy Jacob Beda, assist turnover ratio, number one in the UAAP,
Ooh.
ironically. And Janry Pasol also leads the UAAP in assists, 6 assists a game. Jared Bahay is at 5 assists a game, and Fortsky Padrigao also at 5 assists per game. Mike Phillips, again, we're recording this Friday, October 17, 15.2 boards a game, tied with Colin Sakowe, leads the league. If you're UE and Adamson, what are reasons to be optimistic for round two? Because Adamson started really good. They look like the classic Coach Nash Rosella team, low scoring, defensively oriented, moves the ball on offense, great spacing. But they kind of slipped a bit there. And for UE, they've kind of been getting better as the first round has progressed. But they're just going to beat you by trying to outscore you. They're not exactly going to be an elite defensive team. Is that going to work? Can they gather up some wins before the season ends?
I think when you talk about UE, they're number one in 3-point shooting right now, if I'm not mistaken. And some teams, I would say, kind of get surprised with the firepower they have on offense. As you mentioned, they're an offensive team because of guys like John Abate, who's been playing so well. He's showing everyone that he's ready for the pros. So athletic, can is a downhill threat for them, and of course, Welolingo Lingo, their knockdown shooter. elite shooter for them. And then Precious Momo, you got to talk about him. Like 42 points against against um LaSalle. I mean, that's crazy. 42 points. Precious Momoe is that beast inside the court. But if you talk about UE, they're number one in starter points, right? So their first five is not a question, right? They are a solid team, but after the first five, that's gonna be the question: who's gonna step up and just try to, um, hold the fort for the bench before that first five comes in again, right after they're well rested. So I think that's going to be the question. Defensively, they're very creative. Even if they're not the best defensively, they run a lot of zone. And that's a typical Coach Chris Govina thing to do, to run a lot of zone and different kinds of looks defensively. But in the second round, I think they'll surprise some teams.
By the way, just looking at the team stats quick, you're right. UE's number one 3-point percentage.
Yeah.
UST leads the league in scoring, 92 points a game. Adamson, number one points allowed, 63 a game. Field goal percentage, UST leads the league at 42.7%. They're also number one in made free throws, UST is. So, a lot like about, again, if you're UST. Real quick, can you guess who are the top two in plus minus, individual plus minus this season so far?
Ooh,
October 17.
plus minus. And this doesn't matter like how many minutes you have. Like
Yeah, doesn't matter.
I'd put in Collins there. Is Collins up
Collins
already?
is number three.
Ooh, that's close. Number three. I'd put is Jake Figueroa
Jake
in
Figueroa
the
is
plus
number
minus.
one, plus
Yes,
64.
for sure. He's been
And
playing great.
Omar John is number two, plus 62. So the two NU guys
Wow.
leading the league in plus minus. Well, that was a great UAP discussion. Now, before we end the UAP segment of this, Diego, give me your ranking 1 to 8 at the end of the first round.
Ooh, end of the first round. Um,
Doesn't
I'll
even have to be
put
based on standings. Could be just based on how the teams are playing from how you're
yeah.
looking at it.
I think I like what UST is doing right now. I'm a fan of what they're trying to do offensively and defensively. So I'll put UST there, number one. And it doesn't mean that, they're the best team. It's just for me, like I like how they're playing right now and like the way they have their lineup ready. So I think UST's there. Um, I'd put Ateneo there as well. Just because of how they've surprised a lot of teams this season. And then of course UP, he's got to be there. Tough start for them, but they're getting their rhythm, and they're unleashing Ray Mogat, which is I'm a huge fan of that. You just gotta let him play, let him cook. So far it's been working for them. And then of course NU's there. As you mentioned, still has to prove to us that they can be consistent all the way to the second round, but showing that they can because they're a great defensive team. So that's four. And then LaSalle has to be there. They're still talented enough, and they still have to. Um, the work's got to be put in for them. It's not going to be an easy second round for them just because they've lost a couple of players, but still not impossible for the Green Archers. That's for sure. So that's five. Number six, I'd put FEU, and then Adamson seven, and then eight for UE.
Interesting, interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. Um, mm, it's gonna be an exciting second round for sure.
Yeah,
There's
that's for
so
sure.
much more to unpack. Now, speaking of unpacking, let's look at some of the mailbag questions sent in by the community, the Navs Effect community chat on Messenger. When they found out Diego was gonna come on as the guest, they sent in some questions. Okay, here's the question from Luis.
Mm.
Obviously a hot take topic, but Diego, what are your thoughts on officiating as a whole this season and the injuries to Kean and Mason?
Right. I think we're seeing I think that the reason why it's different and a lot of fans and coaches are talking about it. Obviously there's a change in commissioner, and it's a totally different group of referees that are, running it right now. So I'm not saying it's which one is better, right? I feel like it's just totally different interpretations of what the rules are and what how the game is being called, right? And that's normal. For me, if different set of referees, different set of eyes and brains, right? and it's just normal. I think it's the UAP will really just have to adjust to the way they're calling stuff right now. And then the second question is about Lingo Lingo, right?
The injuries to Mason and Kean.
Yeah, for me, the one for Mason, I wouldn't even say that was. I think that was just a purely
Freak
like
incident
freak incident because when I saw the play, it was Mason had the ball, right? Mason had the ball. He was trying to go for a handoff for one of his teammates.
with Kean,
His
yeah.
teammate with Kean was being denied by the defender. So he kind of pushed to make space. And then because of that push, natamaan si Mason Amos, right? So honestly, I think that was just part of the game. And then of course for Kian and Welo Lingo Lingo, um they already said their piece. They spoke to each other already, and this is part of the game that they play. Basketball, you're in certain situations wherein you might get hurt and you might not get hurt, and especially for me, I personally believe this might be a hot take, but I personally believe in the good in all of the players in the UAP. I don't think there's a player in the UAP in college where they put all the work, the hard work in to be in that situation. And then you're gonna look at someone and be like, I'm gonna hurt this guy. Right? I don't think I still believe in the good in a lot of the players in the UAP that they are competing with the highest integrity and honor. And that I'm sticking to that because I always believe in the good in people.
Fantastic. Well, it's a nice mindset to have.
Hmm.
Uh, you don't want to assume the worst, especially in the world nowadays in social media where it becomes trial by public fire.
Right.
What it feels like sometimes, it's like immediately just assume the worst in the person, curse them out. Sometimes even finding their family members online and fighting with them. It can be a cruel world sometimes. So when you can hope for the best in each human being, that's a great mindset to have. Next question here from Simon. Simon wants to know, Diego, which team do you think will be peaking at the right time this UAP season?
Ooh, I'd have to say UP just because the trajectory is going there. After losing the first two games, they're slowly getting the rhythm. I think this LaSalle game will definitely be a test and see where they are, where the trajectory is leading into the second round. Um, UST and NU, they just got to be consistent, right? I don't think they have to really peak, but they're showing us that if they're consistent, they're going to be a better contenders for the second round and into the final four.
Fantastic. All right. Next question here is from Nicole. Nicole wants to know, is there a plan for Adidas Philippines to produce the Harden nines in women or kid sizing?
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna come, and also I think Harden Volume 10 is also releasing next year. So it should be available. We'll have to check. Obviously the merchandising department and the warehouse for that. But yeah, I'll get back to you guys for sure, just to know that answer if they're gonna be kid sizes and women sizes. But if you're a women athlete and trying to get the men's size, it's usually just I think one size or one and a half size lower for you to get the equivalent size. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm sure that will help some people out. Next question from Ron. Diego versus Boom Gonzalez. Sino mas pogi?
Ooh, since Boom is not here in this conversation, I gotta say me. But when I'm with Boom, obviously I can say that Boom's like my boss, my mentor in the in the in the broadcasting field. Who's a legend, by the way, who's done like I think he just came from an NBA summit wherein he was with
Mm-mm.
legends. I think Shaq, Yao Ming, um, Adam Silver, and congrats to him. He's just a legend. He's paved the way for so many broadcasters and like basketball media personalities, just like us, Naveen.
Absolutely. And Boom is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah,
Trust
for
me.
sure.
And every time I meet Boom, he's just always game to have a conversation, always game to help you out no matter what you need. And super appreciate that guy. Definitely. And he's been in the podcast before. Can't wait to have him again in the future. Just definitely one of the, shall we say, trailblazers of the industry
For
that we
sure.
work in, for sure. Question from Enzo. Okay, or rather, let's get to the question of Carl first, because it's another Adidas question. What pairs or collaborations should the Pinoy crowd be ready for in the coming months?
Ooh, I'm not really allowed to say a lot of these collabs, but um we're working on something. Uh, kind of like what happened to KQ and his shoe, right? I won't say who, I won't say what kind of PE, but there's something down the road, and I think all the Filipino fans will be very, very excited for it. And yeah, it won't just be shoes actually. It's like gonna be different designs for
Merchandise
all,
line.
yeah, for all the Filipino fans to I'd say just guess if it's a team or a player, but it's gonna be a personal edition design for sure.
Interesting. But are we gonna get another colorway of the KQPE?
So far not yet. So far, but shout out to KQ, man. That shoe is doing so well. I think just because he is well loved by the community, he grew up in playing Ligang Labas, and just all the Filipino fans just went and supported his shoe line, and we did not expect for it to like sell out. We're now, I think, on the second um tranche of the shoes coming in, and it's just doing so great for Adidas. And shout out to KQ, one of our main ambassadors for Adidas, doing so well in Korea. Still going for that NBA dream. So yeah,
Fantastic. Definitely. And I like how it's an affordable price as well. The
yeah,
KQPE. Yeah, less than 6,000, right?
yeah. Less than 6K. Yeah, very affordable for a lot of the Filipinos.
Next question from Tonyo. Having experienced the UAAP from both the court as a player and the booth as a TV analyst, what are the most significant nuances of the UAAP game that you were only truly able to appreciate or see differently from a broadcast perspective?
Uh, I think just the total atmosphere of the UAP. When we were playing, when you're inside that court, you don't really see like the total effect of the whole atmosphere of the UAP. Like the drums, the people who are watching, the stuff that people say during the games, um, and just the competitiveness inside the court, right? Because as a broadcaster, you see all these happening all at once, right? You're seeing the physicality, you're seeing the words that are said inside that court, whether between coaches and players, and then how loud it is inside the court. Because when you're the player, you're just focused on the present moment. What play are you trying to execute, right? Um what are they, what the opponent is doing, right? But and what like you don't really see, let's say my teammate, let's say Bright Takweti before and Ange Kwame, what they were doing against each other, because I'm focused on playing and like
Your
defending my
matchup,
matchup.
yeah.
Right, right. So I think it's more of like all the little things that are happening. Uh yeah, when you're playing on the court, you don't really hear what the fans are saying, right? Like, you're just focused on the game. But when you're a fan and watching as a broadcaster, you hear and see all these different things. It's fun, it's fun. Nothing like the UAP. I've played in all different levels, international, in the pros, in the high school level, nothing like college UAP basketball. I've never seen anything like it.
1,000% agree. It's so unique. It's so beautiful in its own way. It's a little hectic and a lot of anxiety sometimes. Don't get me wrong,
Mm,
but
yeah.
overall, we just love it. From Enzo, Diego, can you take us through your professional journey from playing pro hoops to hosting and calling games, and now the gig with Adidas?
I'd say obviously I started off as a professional basketball player and never really expected myself, you know, having a position with Adidas Philippines, or doing broadcast work on TV, doing analyst work for the UAP. That honestly, growing up, that wasn't even part of the plan. I was so focused on becoming a professional basketball player and reaching my dreams of making it to the PBA, right? And when that happened, um I was drafted by Blackwater in the PBA and eventually played for Meralco. But during the pandemic, that's when my other career started, right? Shout out to Tito Miko Halili who, saw something in me, gave me an opportunity in media. He saw that I could explain things well. I can, speak clearly. I can hold the conversation with different kinds of people. And because of the practice that I had in all these shows on TV5, the sports shows that we host, and I covered PBA games during the bubble because older guys weren't allowed to go outside, right? Because there was a
Yep.
restriction. I had so many reps in covering games that helped me become a better broadcaster, right? And see all these different things. That's in the broadcasting side. And with the Adidas side, I started as a sports marketing consultant. The past 3 years, I've been working with them, just really, scouting players, helping them build relationship within the basketball community, build relationship with the athletes that we have and the future athletes that will get to sign as well, and also building relationship with the partners, right? Like Gilas, that was a great collaboration and partnership that happened because of the team, because of um, our network, and we were able to pull that off. And we have like a long-term partnership with SPP. That's something that we are going to be, honing on, focusing on building that relationship and that trust that we can service the national team and all the teams that they have under their belt. So, yeah, professionally, I think it's going well, and it's just a matter of balancing it and making sure that we're at this point I'm still focused on being a basketball player because that's something that you can't do forever. So right now that's still number one priority for me being a hooper.
You guys have some young, great talent in Adidas, right? VJ Pre, John Ray Pasaol, Jacob Bela, Kevin Kimbao. Obviously, Nick Caballero as well, Kyle Paranada. Are you guys planning to add more to the roster of talents that you guys have?
Oh yeah, for sure. So far, we have Andy Hemao, but his team in Canada is a Nike school, and they're like,
Mm.
kind of required to wear that. But so far he is signed with Adidas, so that's definitely one good talent. We're eyeing some more. Obviously we were focused on a lot of our Gilas players. We just signed AJ Edu for us,
Mm.
and that's a good signing. Obviously the future of Gilas. Um, we have a lot of signings in the future. It's gonna be big, but I don't wanna spoil it for the fans. I just just watch out and wait and see, wait and see.
You also have the GDL brothers who
Yes, we
are,
just signed the GDL brothers, who
yeah,
is definitely a great signing.
they're doing
And if you
great in
know
the
them,
PBA.
yeah, if you
Yep.
know them, you know their family. Such great people, great human beings. Obviously, Javi in a good team and a new team won triple double right away, right? Like as a rookie. I mean,
Goodness.
that's insane. So we have a couple of college guys coming in, and of course in the pros. Just wait and see, and even in the international stage.
Fantastic. Diego, man, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. It's an honor to have you on the podcast again. And I hope to have you back again in the future. And you're doing such a great job. Thanks for everything you do. I'll be seeing you soon, man. Keep up the amazing work.
Hey Naveen, thank you so much. Appreciate what you do as well for the industry. Keep doing your thing, building your own community, and yeah, well, I'll see you around and keep doing what you do. We'll definitely cross paths again, one way or another, for sure.
For sure, bro. Hey, you gotta join our pickup run sometimes and school all
Let's
of
do it.
us.
Let's do it.
We gotta
Promise,
make that
bro.
happen. We gotta make that
Let's do it.
happen. Appreciate you, bro. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, brother.